Welcome to the Strong Enough podcast, where we talk about the challenges and celebrate the triumphs of people from all walks of life. I'm your host, Claudia. Today's guest is going to talk about what led her to become a clinical psychologist. We're going to discuss narcissists and why it seems that we are seeing so many more of them out there today. We're also going to talk about her work as a crime fiction author and her new book, Murder at the Narcissus Garden Club. Please help me welcome Dr. Kirsten Hunter. Kirsten, I'm so excited to have you here today with me. How are you doing?
I'm really well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
I am also delighted for you to be here, and there's a few different reasons I have to tell you. The first is everything that we're going to talk about, but those who know me know that I love a good accent, and you have a wonderful accent. So I'm just excited that I get to hear you talk for a little while today. That brings me joy.
I love that. So I get to enjoy your accent and you get to enjoy mine. But I don't actually have a very Australian accent. I have quite a neutral accent, really. Have you heard really Australian accents or how they sound?
I have. So I've kind of heard, I think, the spectrum of really Australian. And then I spoke to an actor once and I was so excited to go into the conversation. And then we got, on the video and he sounded as American as I did. And the only word that you could hear his accent was tattoo. He said tattoo instead of tattoo. So that was the only word. So yes, I feel like I am an Australian accent aficionado, if you will.
Go with that. I'll go with that. Yeah. You know what? In Australia, I love travel, and I love when we get to go out west. And there's these places where it's just a dust bowl, as far as you can see. There's just little puffets of something, but nothing much. And people live out there, and you go into these little pubs that are hilarious, and these characters are extraordinary. And I truly find it hard to understand what they're saying. They're so Australian. So it gets more intense as you get more central. Yeah, it's really we just were out at Ayers Rock in Alice Springs in the middle of Australia, and I felt like such a tourist. It was brilliant. I loved it. Yeah.
That is fantastic. So it sounds like you guys have sort of the same kind of range of accents that we in America have.
I don't, from an Australian ear, it obviously sounds more listening to the American accents, but I think once you reverse it, that's probably true. Yeah, yeah, no, it's great.
Well, we could talk about this for an hour, but we won't.
Okay.
We have more important things to discuss. So I would love it if you would start by telling the audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm a clinical psychologist. I've been a psychologist for 23 years. I've worked in a whole lot of hospitals, but the last 20 years, 20 plus, I've been in my own private practice, which I absolutely love, because then I can spend all my time on clinical sessions rather than in meetings. And and I work with children, adults, families across. I get bored very easily, so I need a lot of stimulation. And so I work with all the clinical areas. I really, really, really love my job. Yeah, no, that's why I can do such big hours, because I just love it. I really love my job. And I've got 5 boys, and they're gorgeous. Everyone thinks our house is going to be crazy, but it's a really chilled space. And I have my beautiful husband, John, who's from Basque in Spain. So we have a very interesting situation, because I can't speak to my in-laws. But yeah, no, that's me in a nutshell. Yeah.
Maybe it's a positive that you can't speak to your in-laws. I don't know.
I don't know. When you start complaining about each other, I'm not part of it. So that's quite nice. Yeah.
I love that. And so there's obviously a lot of masculine energy in your home. How does that work out for you? Because aren't even your dogs male? Is that accurate?
Yes, that is true. And my cats. We've got a pet bird. It's male too. Seriously. Yeah, it's me. It's me. No, but my boys are very balanced with their masculine and their feminine because I have such a huge influence on them. And I actually didn't grow up with gender. So I have a very interesting view on gender. So they are beautiful and they are masculine, but they're not buff heads at all, if that makes sense.
It does. So I want to talk a little bit about that. You said you didn't really grow up with gender. I don't know if that's cultural, because here, it is very gender specific, and male, female, and there's cultural roles and things like that. Now it is shifting somewhat, but what was it like for you to grow up kind of without thinking
I
about male and female and what this person's supposed to do and this person is supposed to do?
Well, firstly, one of my strengths is I'm incredibly analytical and I'm incredibly observant and I'm always, pulling situations apart. Ever since I was a kid, I could read the room, and then I've obviously gotten better at that. So I grew up in a home with my mother and my sister, and so I think because we didn't have males in the house, there wasn't male roles, female roles, and it was just a case of here you are and what you can and can't do, your strengths or not. And then I would go from that and I would go to my friends' houses and they would have different gender roles. Or I'd go to school and I'd see male and female teachers or I'd see children. And I would observe what they're doing and the presumption based on their gender. And I would have a bit of a laugh and think it was very strange and peculiar that they were prescribing this. And so I would see it, but I would never actually be shaped by it. And I've never perceived myself with any restrictions or advancements as a female. So that's what I mean by that. Yeah, Australians very very gender stereotypical with previous generations and various family groups. So no, Australia's not immune remotely. But I just grew up in a little bubble, I think.
That's interesting because a lot of times I think when you have a single parent household and maybe it's, as in your situation, a mom and two daughters, or a man and a son, a lot of times people talk about, oh, well, there's no female role model, there's no male role model, which is an excuse, to some extent. Whereas it seems like your family, your mom taught you, there's no excuses here. We're just going to figure it out and we're going to do it.
Exactly
What was
right.
it like growing up that way versus kind of some of the other things that you saw in school and in different places?
Mm. I remember having a conversation with my grandfather, and I have a cousin who's male, same age as me, and he was saying, "Well, Kirsten, you go and you do the domestic stuff, and your male cousin go do the physical stuff." I'm a tomboy. I'm an absolute tomboy, and so my cousin and I got together, and he said, "I'd rather do the dishes," and I said, "Oh, I'd rather do the gardening." Cool, let's swap. And watching my grandfather have a mental conniption and how ridiculous that was. Things like that. It's I think I think I enjoy it, to be honest. I enjoy how bizarre people are, and I always feel quite removed from it. I don't feel shaped by it, and I feel really grateful for that. So I've always had a strength in that way. Yeah.
Do you think that you are building better partners in your sons? Whether they choose to marry a woman or a man or nobody at all. Do you think
Yeah.
that by this way of growing up that you're building better, and more receptive partners in them?
I think they definitely have a framework of equality, and they have a framework of everyone just getting in and rowing together. And also valuing our own masculinity and our own femininity within the individual, because I have got a lot of masculinity. I'm an absolute leader, I'm an absolute organizer. I'm not someone who passively will take a role at all. But I'm also incredibly nurturing, incredibly mindful, incredibly considerate. My whole ethos is do no harm. It's, hopefully everyone's. And so I think they see that role modeling of masculine and feminine. And I just, it's really interesting when I see feminism and I see females who take on a male role, if that's who they are and that's how they want to be, hooray, fantastic. But I also wonder, are you actually valuing the male roles more than the female roles? And, I find it a fascinating conversation. Yeah, no, gender's interesting to me. It's very interesting to me. Yeah, I don't relate to my clients based on if they're male and female, and I think they find that quite interesting as well. Yeah.
I think so too, because I think, a lot of our listeners and viewers are anti therapy, just from
Mm,
things that I have, heard from different people. And I try very hard every time I bring a therapist on to have them speak to these people and reach out to them because I believe in it so strongly. So, because of kind of your ability to have it all, as far as the balanced energy and the ability to lead, but also nurture, do you think that it does help you relate better to your clients, whether they're male or female?
absolutely. And also, I'm very open with my clients about my learning journey. Being a therapist, a psychologist, a clinical psychologist, it's not about having all the answers. It's about being able to have an open mind and actually say, "Hey, this is what I'm seeing. What do you think?" And be a backboard, be a mirror, and not to be prescriptive at all. There's no power in that. I don't. There's no desire for power. So, for example, I was in session yesterday with a client, and the client was talking about how it's really scary for her to be vulnerable. She's a police officer. Really scary for her to be vulnerable, and she's in a pickle, and so she's. Do you have that saying, "In a pickle"? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and she needs to sit in that space and be vulnerable. And I had an absolute brainwave that, man, when I was a kid, I couldn't be vulnerable either. I had to be strong. And because my mother was in a depressive space, so I didn't put my stuff on her. And to be honest, psychologically, I probably ran rings around her quite early. Um, I had a very complicated relationship with another family member who I can't mention. And I had a father who was disengaged, I was literally invisible to. Um, and I had friends who to be honest, I outgrew them because I had life experience more than them. And I had one dear friend who's still my dear friend, and she would be the one person who I could go and be vulnerable with. But I also didn't want to put too much on her because she had a lot going on. So as a kid, I had to be very strong and I had to be very self-reliant. And there's a lot of positives to that. That's I think a lot of my backbone and my core. But so there I am in session and I had this revelation. Wow, I couldn't actually be vulnerable. And my kids, they absolutely come to myself and their beautiful dad, John, and they can be vulnerable, they can be messy, they can say, "I don't know what I'm doing," and we can be their strength. I never had that. And so what I'm trying to say is in session, it's really a journey. I hate that word, but it's true. In a journey together and you're exploring together. It's a safe space and it's an opportunity for people to learn about themselves, grow, get stronger, heal. And so for me, that's what therapy is. If you've got a really good therapist, if you don't have a really good therapist, go away, go home. Don't don't keep trying. Yeah.
Will you talk about dating your therapist and not really dating them, but trying out different therapists? Because I think a lot of people feel like, well, here's my therapist and good, bad, or indifferent, I'm stuck with them, so I guess I just have to either deal with it or never go to therapy again. So will you talk about trying out new therapists, i.e., dating your therapist? But audience warning, do not go date your therapist.
It's interesting language, yeah. You know what? It is an absolute honor for the person across from you for you to share your world with and to spend time with that person. So if that person isn't pretty remarkable, in my books, they don't deserve that role. And I would be very picky with who your therapist is. Make sure that there's someone you really feel safe with and you feel the sense of momentum in working through issues. Yeah, and we need a hell of a lot more psychologists. It's in Australia, we've got a major lack of psychology. It's really tough. Mm.
What inspired you to go into psychology and to help people in that way?
Um, I was in grade 10, so I was 16 when I discovered psychology, and it just clicked. And it's been black and white for me that that's where I fit. I've always been fascinated by human behavior, human emotion, human thought, and I've also, I think I can't go into a lot of detail, but I've been brought up with a lot of complexity around me, a lot. And so I think I grew up in the lion's den, and that teaches you to be really streetwise and to be really clever with people. So I could take those life skills and then expand and learn any more. And you know, it's always just been a very it's a glove. It's a natural fit. Yeah, love it.
One of the things that we talk about a lot is self-care. Self-care has become a huge topic. There's always a debate as to what really is self-care. You know, is it taking a bath or is it taking a walk, or do none of those things count? One of the things I think that you really like to do, or that brings you peace and joy, is writing. Will you talk about how you discovered that and what it feels like for you to be able to sit down and write and just let the words flow? I did this like you're actually writing, which I'm sure you're not. So, this, when the words flow on the keyboard.
I had a lot of rough things happening in my life, and then approximately 7, 8 years ago, which was when I got together with my beautiful husband John, um, I then felt safe and life was good, and my mental health boomed. So prior to that, I've always functioned really well, but I have had to claw my way, and I haven't been okay. So when I finally was with someone who treated me with such love and support, and he's beautiful. But to be honest, I was happy before I met him. I was just away from bad situations. So um, that's when my creativity bloomed, and I'd always had an inkling to write because I'm a very creative person, and I'm also a very analytical person, and I'm also a very self-driven and organized person, and that all comes together nicely for writing. So I had in my mind I wanted to write, so I started writing uh, psychology books actually, and I've written 6 psychology books called Signposts for Living, but they're all pretty serious. And so while I was writing that, my mind started to think about this fiction series, and at the same time, I wrote 2 books that were fiction books at the same time as writing 6 non-fiction books. And it was actually a series of 6 fiction books, which is the first one that I'm releasing in a month. So yeah, it's called Murder at the Narcissus Gardening Club, and it's a series of 6, and it's got the protagonist Margot Gray throughout all of them. And I just my brain just exploded with these ideas, and I literally formatted the 6 books in one hit. All of the detail, and they're incredibly different books. They really explore very different areas, but with the same protagonist through. And then when I started writing, I could just disappear, and I would recharge, and I would feel such a sense of satisfaction. So it's for me writing. I come away feeling better for it, and it's joyful. Yeah, I actually wrote the 3rd book. I've written the first 3 books already. I'm currently writing the 4th book, and I wrote the 3rd book in 2 weeks while I recovered from a hysterectomy 2 years ago. You literally, and the keyboard, which is in front of me, I now can't see the letters on the keyboard. So, I didn't even turn television on, and I also didn't take pain medication because I was so joyful to have 2 weeks to just get it out. So I love writing. Yeah, definitely. And when I start writing, my husband's like, "I'll see you later." She's gone. She's gone.
Well, so let's talk a little bit about this series, your fiction crime series, because as we chatted a little bit beforehand, I love crime, not committing it or it being committed, but just in general, I love true crime and, novel thrillers and things like that. So, what inspired you to that path?
Well, hey, I grew up reading Agatha Christie, you know? My friends were reading Babysitters, you know, Babysitting Club or whatever, and I was reading Christie. I love Agatha Christie, and I love the puzzle mystery. I love that, you know, the brain is trying to work out what's happening, and, so I just really enjoy that, and that taps into my analytical brain, and, I really enjoy them. So I didn't set out to write, a crime fiction, it's just my mind thought of the crime fiction, and my mind thought of the characters, and, uh, I read a lot, I really enjoy reading, and the crime fiction that I read, I get frustrated as a psychologist, with the books not having depth with exploration of the psychological themes, and so it's me finally getting to write a book that I wanna read,
Mhm.
and so it's really very detailed with regard to exploring not too much, but, you know, so it's psychological puzzle mystery with a very sophisticated psychological edge, but also very relatable, you know, themes that people really do experience day in, day out, which I know because my clients come in day in, day out, you know, with these issues. But there are a lot of issues that we don't talk about. And
Mhm.
I also am really excited about bringing all this psychology up, but making it not dry and making it really enjoyable and relatable. Yeah, I love it.
I'm excited, to read it. So that your first book or that first book in that series is coming out in May, correct?
10th of May, yes.
And
But you know,
go ahead.
we've got we've got an Australian Book Lovers Award type thing, and the book
Uh-huh.
has just been listed on that, which is extremely exciting. And
Mhm.
so I've quickly go and publish it online because it's already been advertised online. So they've actually launched me into publication before my launch on the 10th of May. So it's actually online now. Yeah,
Surprise.
yeah, there you go. There you go. It's no, it's a real honor to be on that list. Yeah, very cool.
So, when you look at writing going forward, I know you have 3 more books in your series. Um, what do you think is gonna be next after that? Do you think you're gonna tackle a different genre? Do you feel like you will leave the psychological aspects and kinda delve in to write the books that you wanna read? What do you think is gonna be next for you?
Is such a great question. I haven't actually thought about it. Well, it's a series of 6 Margot Gray books, so I think I'll be keeping myself busy. I've got 2 coming out this year.
Mhm.
Murder at the Narcissus Gardening Club and Mystery of Placid House is coming out in August this year, so they're all ready. And then after that, my goal is to publish the next 4 books, 1 per year. But I will have a lot of time left over because I've already written them. I'm just refining a lot of them. As for what's next, I don't know. When I get to the end of the 6 books, will I have more Margot Gray books that I wanna write? Probably, because I absolutely love her character. She's someone who I would desperately love to meet, and I'd love to spend time with, and so I've written someone who I want in my world. You know, she's exquisite, and she's infuriating, and she doesn't give a fuck. It's great. So yeah, I don't know if I wanna keep writing that. I've got 2 other books that are psychology books that I have already kind of written the scaffolding. One's on bridging the orgasm gap, so that's sex, obviously. Another one is about the craft of psychology, so that's the skill of being a therapist. But that's not my focus. They're just 2 books that I feel like I've just got to get out of my head. So I don't know. I don't know. I've also written 4 children's psychology books called the Squish Theories series, and I've got the children who love them, and they're asking me to write more Squish books. So I don't know. I don't know, but I don't actually decide anything. My brain just thinks of things, my brain decides, and then I just am the scribe. So I've just accidentally written a musical as well, and it's been performed in a beautiful theatre, and it's touring around Queensland. It's called Love Song, the cabaret, and so that's happening. And also this first book, Murder at the Narcissus Gardening Club, I've actually written that into a play as well. So it's out at the moment, going for different awards. So I'm a very creative person, and this is my fun. So I've no idea, but I love not knowing. Yeah.
It seems that you have comfort in that.
Yeah, I love not knowing, and I love when I don't know what I'm doing. because that's an adventure, and I think I have the confidence of knowing I'll work it out,
Mhm.
and I'll be very bored. See, I said earlier, I get bored easily, I do. I might be a little bit ADHD. Yeah, I just love new projects. It's great. Yeah.
Who was the inspiration for Margot?
I think Margot was the fact that I haven't had the female role model that I wish I had. And I think I've created her character because she's genuinely someone I'd like to meet. Don't get me wrong, I've got incredible supports around me. I've got some beautiful family and I've got really beautiful friends. But I think she's the archetype of the role model I wish I had. And I wouldn't want someone who is a goody two shoes, who's straight, who's got, that. No, I like messy. I like people who don't have the answers, but they've got incredible strengths and they're very, they're very sparkly in their personality and infuriating. I quite enjoy people like that. So yeah, no, that's who Margot Gray is. I genuinely am glad to have met her now.
I love that. What would be your advice, for people who also don't have those role models in their lives, but maybe don't have the ability or the creative spirit to write this amazing person that they would love to know? What would your advice be on where they can find somebody, that can lift them up and support them and be their cheerleader in
Mm.
the tough times?
I think that's a great question as well. Firstly, it's so important to have role models because, they just, even if they're not with us in that moment, psychologically, we have a sense that they're there. They also can give us hope. This so and so has got this approach in life, so maybe I can. And they also can guide us. What would they do in this situation? So it's so important. It's like our foundation. I don't think we can find everything in one person because, we're all so flawed. I think that it might be a case of, firstly, if you don't have those people in your life, keep looking, keep looking. I see it as collecting gems in life and really paying attention to meeting new people. And then as humans, we're really bad at actioning that we want to spend time with someone. We get in our comfort zone and we, I'd like to see you, but we don't initiate meeting because we think that they won't want to or we don't follow it up. So put in the effort and also splice people up. So take a bit of this person and a bit of this person, a bit of this person, put it together and yeah. So I think you've got to value the pursuit, if that makes sense.
I love that. I love that. I want to go back and talk a little bit more about psychology. Again, we were chatting a little bit before we jumped on here, and we were talking about narcissism and narcissists. And one of the things that I asked you, but I asked you to hold your thought on so that we could talk about it here, is the fact that it feels like there are just so many narcissists running around society today. And I wanted to know what you thought about that. In that, are we just recognizing these people better because society has a better understanding of what type of person it is and what red flags and what actions to look for? Or are we in a world where we are breeding more narcissists?
A great question. Again, you good questions.
Thank you.
Um, I I think I think my response to that is there's multiple layers. Firstly, there's no question that we're now having more education with regard to learning about ourselves, learning about our standards, and and having language to understand manipulative behavior, such as the word gaslighting is a modern term, and it's profound, isn't it? Saying, no, no, the sky is green, you idiot. Don't you know it's green? What are you doing? It's green. You know, um, so it's definitely modern education. I think that a lot of people they use narcissist. You're a narcissist, and they use it as a throwaway criticism, and they have no idea what they're talking about. So there's a lot of mislabeling, and it's used as a weapon. Um, I We don't genuinely understand where narcissism comes from. It's nature and nurture, but we don't know the ratio. So it's incredibly difficult to explain why there's more. My feel is that we don't have more in the population at all. It's just that we're now identifying them, and we've also gone from a culture where people would keep everything behind closed doors. Whereas now there's an understanding of coercive control, there's domestic violence orders. So I actually feel like we've had this deep festering wound, and now it's opened up and it looks really ugly, but it's just that it's on the outside, not the inside. And yeah, and I'm also fascinated that people, I'm not going on, but people in the population, I divide them into 3 categories. Those people that haven't come across narcissism, and I call them Bambis. They've just got no idea, and good on them, but they're vulnerable. Then the middle group are the ones that are currently in the absolute storm with someone with narcissism, and they don't know what's going on. They don't know which way is up. They've lost their voice. They're manipulated. They're eroded. They're really, really, really having a hard time. And then there's the third group, and they're the ones, which is myself, who have had personal life experience with people with narcissism. And they are very streetwise. They understand the nuance, which you can't understand unless you've lived it. And they can observe it in other people. They have some scars, but they're glad of it. And so there's those groups. So I'm interested with Murder at the Narcissus Gardening Club because it really explores narcissism in a light way and in a dark way, how those 3 groups respond differently, because they'll be very different. Fascinated by that. Yeah.
So all 3 of those groups are in the book. There are people within those 3 groups.
Interesting. No, I think the people in the book are in the second and third group.
Okay.
Oh no, in the first group. There is one in the first. More that the readers are going to be in each of those groups, and from a reader perspective, how they're going to respond to the book differently. It's going to be very different. Yeah.
I love what you said about narcissists kind of being overused or being thrown at someone. I feel like PTSD is the same. And that is very frustrating to me as a person who actually has PTSD and has been diagnosed with it. You know, you hear people say, "Oh, I had to wait in line at the grocery store today. It made me have PTSD." And I just want to say, bitch, no, it did not. It did not give you PTSD. And I hear what you're saying too. It's the same about narcissist, is that's just become a term that if anybody does something selfish or rude, they're suddenly a narcissist, in somebody else's eyes. What do you think is key to helping people? Okay, now that things are out in the light, people are kind of seeing the behavior more for what it is, but how do we really dial it to a point where people are using the term correctly and people are identified correctly? Not that everybody has to walk around with like a big necklace, that says they're a narcissist, but when you start to throw the term around, it then ends up losing its weight. And we don't want these people to just lurk amongst the shadows. So what do you think?
Well, firstly, I can really relate to what you're saying with PTSD, and it's deeply insensitive when people make those throwaway, ignorant comments. I think with narcissism, the truth is, I actually don't think we can educate people very well, because narcissism is an experience. Having that person across from you in a personal relationship or in the workplace, actually, is something you have to experience to understand. So it's a little bit like if you are on a boat in a storm out at sea, you then know what that's like. Whereas if you are purely describing it, you're not going to know, you're not going to get it. And so I actually know a lot of psychologists that I supervise who have no idea of what they're talking about. They've studied it, they know the criteria, but they don't understand it, they don't get it. And I think that's because the population is divided in two groups. There's those people who don't have a personality disorder and those people that do. And if you don't have a personality disorder, you can be a total asshole. You can be selfish, you can be unpleasant, but you're just behaving like a bit of a, selfish child, really. Whereas someone with narcissism, they are actively trying to erode the person across from them in a very psychological, intentional way. They're trying to take away that person's reality, their voice, their social supports. They're trying to have all the power in the relationship. Their goal is not to be constructive, but to be destructive. And you cannot. I'm a very skilled person psychologically, and my verbal IQ is really high. Sorry to sound like a wanker, but it's true. And I cannot out-debate someone with narcissism. You cannot approach them and communicate. You cannot bring a problem to them and work it through. You cannot win, because their goal is not to actually get an outcome. It is to continue to attack you and to erode you. So it is something you have to live through, and to understand it's honestly a lost cause, and all you can do is have boundaries and don't be there. And if I had a magic wand, I would make all people with narcissistic PD not be able to have a relationship with anyone apart from someone else with narcissistic PD.
That
Because
would be
it's so
amazing.
Yeah, wouldn't it be great? So they're just it is literally a disordered personality.
Mhm.
And so, no, I don't think people can get it, to be honest.
Can they change? Can people with a narcissistic PD change or heal or any of the above?
No, it's very depressing to say, but the truth is, even when they come into therapy, the information they get in therapy, they weaponize, and they use that to have the better language to win the debates with more psychological confusion for the person that across from them. It's like being colorblind. You can't go and then not have colorblindness anymore. I mean, not a very neat analogy, but no, no. They might learn. They can improve in their behaviours because there's boundaries around them, and they learn that they're not going to get away with it. Yes, so they can improve in their behaviour. Do they change their actual psychological framework or their level of conscience? No, which is depressing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, we're not going to end on that depressing note, because that would be depressing. We're going to switch topics real quick before I let you go. We are going to talk about tattoos. I have a lot of them, as you can sort of see today. Now, I know that you don't have any tattoos, so I would love to know. Well, I have two questions. The first is, if you were going to get one, what would it be and why? And then, does anyone else in your immediate family, so your husband or your sons, do any of them have tattoos?
Well, I love this. My personality is that, okay, I love tattoos and I really enjoy them on other people. Um, my issue with my personality is that I could never commit to one thing, and I know that I wouldn't become bored of it. It's just my personality. So I've been talking about this for years, that if I ever got a tattoo, it would be on my arm, and it would be my 5 boys, and it would be their fingerprints, because that is so personal. And how could I ever get sick of that? So if I ever got a tattoo, that's what it would be, their fingerprints, and just like little walking footsteps kind of thing. Yeah,
I
definitely I would
love
do that.
that.
Yeah, and it would be very delicate. But I guess I just don't really have the drive to make it happen. But I have lots of friends with tattoos. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no. My boys, no, not yet. It's quite sweet. The 3 big boys that are
Mhm.
20, 20 and 18, they're currently talking about getting a tattoo between them, the 3 boys. And they're having that's a dinner conversation that keeps getting talked around, because the 3 of them deciding on something is challenging. And then the 2 little ones that are 9 and 12, they're feeling quite left out. So yeah, no, tattoos are fun. I really respect people who commit to design, commit to something. I just can't do it. For me, it's like saying, okay, I want you to put a shirt on, and then you're going to wear that shirt for the rest of your life. Can't do it. It's not a
I can understand that. And so I don't know if this is accurate, but I watched this show called Botched. And I don't know if you guys have that show there, but it is these two plastic surgeons in LA, and they help people who have been through bad plastic surgery and whatnot. So I can make this a really long story, and I'll try not to. One of them, they had a bet, and whoever lost the bet, the other one got to pick a tattoo for them. And so he picked it, and he had it put on. So the artist said that it was an ink that dissolves, and in somewhere between like 9 and 15 months, it went away. Now, I don't know if this was a complete lie, or I have not had the chance to research this yet. But theoretically, there may be technology out there for temporary but longer term tattoos. So I'll have to study up on that. I'll get back to you. But I love your idea. I love it. And I think that's something that you would never get tired of. Well, Kirsten, where can people find you? So if they want to grab one of your books, and whether that is one of the children's books, Squish series, is that what it was? That's adorable. Your new nonfiction that's coming out, one of your psychology books, if they want to track you down when they come to visit Australia and have Vegemite along with you, where can they find you?
Oh, okay. I love it all. I have a website called KirstenHunterAuthor.com, and that has everything on it, with everything that's available. All of the books are available on all online platforms. So, Amazon, Booktopia, I don't know what you've got over there, but they're on everything. So that's the Signposts for Living books, which is the psychology books. There's 6 of them. I could go into that, but I won't. And then there's the Squish books, which is the children's books. And now we've got Murder at the Narcissus Gardening Club. And in August, we're going to have Mystery of Placid House, which is different again. So yeah, they are all available online. And my Facebook and Instagram, Kirsten Hunter Author, is where you can find me.
Excellent. Kirsten, you have been absolutely amazing today. I so appreciate your spending a little time with me to talk about books and narcissists and a little bit about tattoos. So thank you so much.
Nice. Lovely to meet you, and lovely to enjoy your accent.
Thank you, and you as well. I appreciate you. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and follow us on social media so you'll never miss what's going on. Remember, until next week, you are strong enough and you are worth it. Thank you for listening to the Strong Enough podcast. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform by searching Strong Enough. And on YouTube, we're on the Spear Talk channel. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Strong Enough Pod. If you have suggestions for an upcoming episode or a future guest, please reach out at strongenoughpod@gmail.com. Remember, you are worth it.